because we've been down that road for years now with our subdivision.
Yeah. All right, Commissioner Answorth, will you give us an indication?
If you bow your head, we'd have an opening prayer. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to be here and to serve the city of Hernando. We just ask that you bless our decisions tonight and guide us as we listen, that we might hear. For it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Here.
Commissioner Thorne? Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Max?
Here.
Commissioner Jordan? Commissioner Hawkins?
Here.
Commissioner Skeen?
Here.
Commissioner Safley?
Here.
Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max? Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
All right, old business, we have PL 1693 Delta Planning PUD. The request is to revise the PUD text on 251 acres. The subject property is located on the west side of McIngvale Road, south of Pleasant Hill Road, and section south of Pleasant Hill, and section 31, Township 2, Range 7, Bob Dalhoff, representing the owner of the property. Mr. Cardozo, will you give us the staff planning comments and report?
Yes, sir. As you mentioned, this is a request from Bob Dalhoff on behalf of the property owner to revise the PUD text to incorporate the Delta Landing PUD. We did hear this last month and it was tabled at our January meeting, but I'll briefly go over the previous and the current text for context of tonight's decision. The original Brighton Village PUD was approved in 2007 and was a mixed-use proposal on 251 acres, which is the same parcel we're discussing tonight. The original text was 131 acres of residential, 20 acres roughly of commercial, 72 acres of amenities and common open space. The overall density of this proposal is 3.2 dwelling units per acre, and we do have the full text in front of you tonight in case you have any questions. The current text tonight is on that same 251 acre parcel, and there's some primary differences between the old plan and the new, of which include the removal of the townhome area on the northeastern corner, the removed multifamily age-restricted units. The internal streets were revised to account for the new traffic pattern, and they presented a residential pattern book. It does increase the overall number of units, and with the addition of common open space, the overall density is the same 3.2 dwelling units per acre. Another primary difference in the old plan versus the new is the incorporation of a YMCA campus. The bulk requirements are listed in your staff report, and the right-of-way has been looked at with a city engineer and approved for utility locations. And the parking requirements are listed on page 14 for all the commercial uses proposed along McIngvale Road. Based on the feedback from our last meeting, the developer went back and proposed a few new changes to incorporate into their request tonight. The first of which was the commentary on the cemetery. So they did commission a survey which confirmed that the cemeteries were located on the church's property, roughly 50 foot west of the property line. And there's an exhibit in your staff report, should be towards the very last page of their proposal that shows that, and I believe they have it in their presentation tonight as well. Based on this location of right-of-way, the proposal has also limited the connection to Froney on the western property line. And the developer also, in conversations with, from our last meeting, has proposed the language in your staff report for the connection of sewer to Dogwood Hollow and the Brody Road. And there's a specific paragraph for the sewer extension on the responsibility and timing of which in your staff report, and what the city's responsibility versus the developer's responsibility is. They added a traffic circle on the northern east to west street to break up the long drag that we had. And then the minimum home square footages in all areas have been increased 200 square feet respectively. So C1 went from 1,600 to 1,800. C2 and C3 went from 1,800 to 2,000 square feet, and area C4 went from 2,000 to 2,200. There is language in the staff report about the future land use plan showing a mixed-use designation. The full designation is in your staff report. I'm available if you have any questions about that. And then, as always, in the discussion portion of the staff report are the 3 criteria for rezoning, how this conforms to the general development plan, why this existing zoning district is improper or inappropriate, and then what economic, physical, or social changes have occurred in the area that altered the basic character of the area and makes this proposed amendment appropriate. And so, based on all that information, we did prepare proposed motions to approve or deny in your staff report and associated reasons. And then the full text, the previous plan and the current plan are in your staff report. And the applicant's here today for a new presentation, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Bonoz? Applicant, please come forward, state your name and address in its entirety.
Thank you. Bob Dalhoff, DT Design Studio, 6465 North Quail Hall, Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you again for allowing us to be before you. I don't know if you want to, is there, you want me to do the clicker thing here? As Austin said, he pretty well summarized everything, and I hate to go all the way back through everything with you. Will, if you'd like. I'm sure you're all familiar with the changes in the area, which are a tremendous amount of changes that have happened in the area, growth and new development that's happening. The plan that's before you, as he mentioned, is a modification to an existing plan development that's still on the books. As I went through the existing plan development, I personally had some problems with some of the street widths, being 12-foot wide lanes from curb to curb. Couldn't get an emergency vehicle by them if the car was parked visiting someone, so we've changed those to get some more your street standards. We worked with the city engineer with regards to setbacks so that we could get a tree in the front yards and have enough room for pedestrian and utility easements. So we worked on that. Also I have here, so you'll know, the developers here, Johnny and Jerry both are. Nick is here with the engineering and traffic, which you'll address later on with regards to, because I think traffic, street connection, and cemetery were the biggest part of the issues of our last meeting, and we have answers for all those now. So I'd like to go over those with you. I'll click through these if it's okay. Oh, no, maybe I won't. I'm not doing, I promise you, I'm not doing that.
Go to the folder,
I'm sorry, I clicked full screen and it went crazy.
and then his proposal should be
Right there.
from today.
Yeah. I don't know.
Just try to advance it from there, don't full screen it.
Yeah. It went crazy when I full screened it.
Okay. See if this will work. This, as I'd previously shown you, this was the site analysis of the property. You can see to the north is very densely wooded to the north, separating the development to the north and this tract of land. The southern part of this tract of land, as you can see, is pretty much treeless. It's been in crop for years and years. But one of the things I think I want you to please take notice of is the denseness of the wooded area to the north. We are proposing, as in the original PD, a 50-foot wide non-disturbance buffer area between the two developments, and then supplement vegetation, evergreen vegetation, where there is any vista through anywhere. So we'd like to have that, certainly would like to have that separation. This is a copy, which is a little larger. This is a copy of the original plan. To the over to the left is the townhomes, townhouses actually, which we deleted, turned into single-family homes, and then up towards the front were actually apartments that we deleted also, and then we also deleted about 6 of the condominiums along the lake edge, so we've reduced that number also, which I'll show you on one of the slides, which kind of summarizes this. This was approved 15 years ago. Obviously, it's dated. It needs to be updated. Again, we're planning for the future and not the past, so I think that needs to happen. One of the things I did and sat down and met with people on was these are the areas in red that we really did the modifications to. The one on the left-hand side is where the townhouses are, which we got rid of them and put single-family homes in there. And then to the north, and we changed the traffic circle which I'll show you a picture of that in a second. And along the lake area, we changed the lakes instead of one long continuous lake, which nobody could get to, the now known as the Hernando Greenway, Hernando and DeSoto County Greenway along the creek. And this development doesn't address that at all. So what we wanted to do was to address that, also provide 6 pedestrian access points to that greenway system through this development. Right now, you can't get to it if it was there. In doing all that, we obviously have to do some dirt work for those lakes that we're proposing, but we have been asked also because of some MPO funds that the possibility of being quite a while before you'll receive any more MPO funds to actually improve that greenway. The developer was asked if he would, over a period of phasing it, would asphalt the trail, and he agreed to do that in phases as he moves towards the west. So again, that obviously takes a tremendous amount of, I would say, burden off of the city and MPO. But in these changes that we made, and the change to the north that you see, the red rectangle up to the north, that was a tie to the that stub street there that we made as requested by the staff. We did do away with the one on the left-hand corner where that circle is, you see up there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Joe Frank and all are investigating that, see if that is a permanent cul-de-sac or was a temporary cul-de-sac. If it's permanent, then there's no tie there, I assume. So the other, wish a pointer would work on this, but I don't think it works on TVs. Otherwise, we've got connections where they were before on the previous plan approved. This is the new plan, cleaned up. As you can see, there's 3 lakes now. There's access points, 6 different access points. So I can walk over here without everything sliding off this table. It's okay, I'll walk over the screen.
Yeah.
But you can see the greenway, which runs parallel there to the creek that we want, and then we have access, north-south accesses from the neighborhood in different points. 6 of those, so people actually at strategic points, so people can actually get to that trail and use it. The other thing that we're doing, the YMCA, Michelle, if you point, this is the location of the YMCA. That's 10 acres. That's 10 acres that's also being gifted by the developer, and that 10 acres is also going to be pad ready, so the utilities will be brought to it so it can be ready for construction. That, and then we're also stubbing sewer to the north to there you go, to get rid of the 2 lagoons, which my understanding is that the city is under somewhat of a mandate with DEQ to do that. So we figured this is the easiest way. Otherwise, it's a large expense to the city for pump stations and force mains to get all the way back out, across the properties and back out down south to McIngvale. So the developer's also willing to do that. He may not develop those lots, but extend sewer so that can go ahead and happen. The traffic circle is a little larger, and we have retail facing it, and the front of the YMCA faces it. Across from on the left side of that traffic circle is what I call the Village Park, and that Village Park is right in front of the senior living area, which is there in that orange ochre color. Is for senior housing. And then the other product is different product, which I'll show you in a little more detail. I think this is something that a key for you to see that actually shows the difference of the changes that have been made. And I think that's in your packet, I believe. Maybe easier for you to read than it is on the screen. It's so small, but you can see where we've reduced density. In 4 different places, plus removed the townhomes and also removed the multifamily out of it. So you can see, is this chart in y'all's packet? Okay. Okay. Just want to make sure. But it kind of summarizes the approved plan versus the.
I think it was something you handed out.
Versus the proposed amended plan. I didn't know if y'all have any
I
questions
can
about
try
it.
to enlarge it, it's just when you put it on full screen, it wouldn't work.
Okay. This is some inspiration that we used, photos that we've used. Some of these are projects that we've done, but we wanted to create this kind of environment out there. Very, very much pedestrian friendly. In fact, the boulevard that we added the full length, almost the full length, 3/4 of the length of this development, which did not exist except for half of it in the very beginning. All the lots that front that boulevard from end to end have no driveways on it. They're all rear access units. All the rear access units also have a 20-foot parking pad in the back plus a 2-car garage. So you can park 4 cars at every house. Plus you have on-street parking, and the streets are wide enough now to park on. And this goes on, this is inspiration. This is, again, trying to create an environment that's a people place, raise your family, even work and live in this area, you know, if you can, if you're set to one of these retail uses that are within here. Also, this is an example of actual condominiums that we're looking at, types and styles for that would back up to those lakes. Then some retail and office, small scale buildings around that. The larger scale buildings would be across from the clock tower in the mixed-use building where there's retail down and some lofts above. This is the clock tower in that traffic circle. Now, in the background is the senior housing, and then over to the left where that gazebo is, that is the park area right in front of there. As you can see, in almost all of this, in fact, in all of this development, all the houses are facing the streets instead of backing up. This is another glimpse. This is from the sidewalk on the retail area of the mixed-use area, looking out. Background again is senior housing in the park. Then this is another one, and over to the left, you're getting a glimpse of the YMCA, and then the retail, the clock tower. This is also the retail area, lofts above, and then you see that is the gray with the glass is the YMCA building sitting over there. Oops. And that is actually the rendering from YMCA that they have given us to use. I think Justin may be here if you want to, if you'd like any more description of what it offers. I kind of went over with y'all at the last meeting all the different elements it has within it for the public, adult daycare, cooking and swim lessons, swim team meets. So you don't have teams don't have to travel now; they can come here. So this kind of is actually is the land use plan, and you can see the red is the YMCA track. With that YMCA track and the green belt and that sewer, extension equals out to about $3.5 million that the developer is providing, gifting for this development also. $3.5 million of improvement that he's gifting. I don't know if y'all have any questions about this stuff. We can go back to it. This is the street network, and we'll get into the traffic in a second. We've amended it so you see on the west end, we are not connecting to the road anymore. We are still connecting it to the other ones until we're told, until staff tells us take them off. To be honest with you, we don't have to have them. We don't need them. Our traffic will work without it. But being a planner for so many years, I believe that connectivity is good. I know that everybody wishes they lived on a dead-end street, but they don't, and that's not possible. So, but we'll do whatever staff asks us to do, or y'all, the Planning Commission or the Mayor and Board, as far as connections. We were just told to connect, and we've connected.
We don't know the answer if that's permanent or not, temporary.
No, we don't.
What you're saying.
That one that has the cul-de-sac at the end, the way it's designed, it's like the cul-de-sac goes all the way to the property line, which makes it kind of a suspicious. Usually when that happens, that means that road's going to continue on later on. They're doing some investigation on the maps, on their plats and things, if they can find
On
out.
Dogwood Hollow, is that the road you're referring to?
Yes, sir. It's the only one I think that has the cul-de-sac there. The rest of them are just stubbed. So that's the one where the lagoons are. Yeah. So that connection would not be made if we're told not to make it, or any of them.
So while we're on that slide,
Yes.
and Austin, this is something you can answer. On there, it's listed as alley and service drive, private. I live in Edgewood, and we've dealt with the situation for years where a street was, you know what I'm talking about, the street was listed as private. What will be the situation on this? Will this be, when those roads start to deteriorate, will it be the city's responsibility to keep those up? Or since it's listed as private, will it be the homeowners?
Be the homeowners. If it's listed as private, it'd be reflected on the plat and it'd be the homeowner's responsibility or the homeowners
Right.
association's responsibility.
Right.
Okay, so that's and I know what we're dealing with right now on our subdivision, just on one short street. There's 5 houses on it. And that's been an ongoing thing for 10 years now. So that's a lot of street there for
Yeah.
the responsibility
Well,
of homeowners to
The only
to
thing
keep
that'd be
paid.
responsibility of the homeowners are the service drives, the alleys, the service drives.
Correct.
Right.
I get that, but that's a,
Yeah, it's a lot, and this development will have multiple associations in it for different, for instance, the senior may have its own association, the neighborhood will have its own, and there'll be a business association, and then there'll be a kitty that puts money in everything. So I've set up associations that way, some in Germantown that way, the multiple associations in one development. Ultimately, it all ends up back in the same kitty, but at least it's rated up. It's the cost, those dues are based on what they have to maintain. Now, the key to the problem that you're talking about, and I've lived in 2 now that have the service drive in the rear, and it's the way it depends on how it's constructed. I can tell you. I've been doing this, I've mentioned to you, about 50 years now, so I've been through a lot, and I've done thousands and thousands of small lot developments with service drives. If the service drive is built with soil cement and then asphalt, it won't fail.
so these same streets are going to have the garbage trucks. They're going to have, if there's emergency vehicles coming through, and we all know what those weigh. And I've seen streets, and I know what they do to the
Yeah.
streets, and
Yeah.
that's kind of one of the problems
Yeah.
we're dealing
Yeah.
with here.
Yeah.
And so, and the situation is, as in our subdivision, those homeowners, when they bought, as probably would a lot of these, they buy these houses not knowing that they're going to have that expense later down the road, and then you're looking at, in this situation, hundreds of thousands of dollars of repaving cost that they would be facing at some point in time. And those trucks, I don't care how you construct those streets, you start put garbage trucks on them every week, they're not going to hold up.
Yeah, I'll say this, in the development that I lived in Collierville, Almondale Farms, it was alley service drive, garage was in the rear, no driveway, the whole development has no driveways in the front, not to interrupt any sidewalk or kids riding bicycles and things like that. And we just, after 20 years, had to repave our alleys. Not all of them, but just some of them.
So in 20 years, say it lasts that long, in 20 years, the homeowners there, a lot of times, they would have bought in, sold out, especially those homeowners won't know that that's going on.
Well, it should be,
And then-
it should be put in front of them at their closing, obviously. But there's nothing to say
Should
it'll
be-
break down in
should be
20
and
years or
will
25
be is
years,
two
yeah.
different things, though.
And I'll say this, our trash is picked up in the rear also. And I have another one that have done that away, that also the trash and the mail is in the rear. Mailboxes are actually in the rear. So, but I don't know if that's mail is doable here, because we have to have gang boxes here, obviously. I think everybody does nowadays. So, but I will say this, that one of the things that happens, that has happened, you're collecting dues every month from everybody. So it builds up. Our kitty built up. We had abundance of money. Not only did we do that, we did all kinds of other improvements in the neighborhood. So it builds up over a period, especially over 20, 25 years. If it had to be done even then, all of them may not have to be done. It depends on how they were abused or how they were constructed in those areas. But I can tell you, ours was solid as a rock, but we wanted another top coat put on it. That's what we did.
And how
It
much
wasn't
did
that the street had failed. We just wanted a top coat on it.
How much did that run you at the time?
No, I can't remember, sir. I just don't remember exactly.
Another short street that we were looking at was going to run about 60,000 just for a little 5-house stretch.
Ours wasn't that. Well, I mean, it could have been 6,000 overall, but I'm just saying mine wasn't, I know. Mine had 10 houses on it, 8 houses on, I'm sorry, 8 houses on it. So I don't know. I didn't have, all it was just taken out, it was out of the kitty in the bank. They just used that money. We did not have an assessment. Did not have to do an assessment. The Almondale Farms project, I'll tell you, is 550 acres in size, twice the size of this one. So, anyway, again, if constructed properly, they'll hold up.
Is there not an option for this to be constructed in a way that we wouldn't have that potential? It's not a potential problem. At some point, it will be a problem. It will be a problem. Is that?
I don't know that you could make a road. I don't know that you could make a city road that doesn't have to be repaired at some point.
No. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Make the streets built to a standard to where, like the other streets, it would be not a private situation, not a service drive, to where something that would be city maintained, or?
We could, I just don't know if the city would want to put ourselves in that liability of a private service drive.
Right, and that's kind of where I'm going. This is exactly what I was getting at, is that's where we are in our subdivision. And so it's been that constant battle. The city doesn't want to take the responsibility for it. The homeowners don't.
And they should.
The homeowners can't afford to take the responsibility for it. Because even though they're taking money in, there's other things that come up as well that the money has to be spent on.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, we had lakes and wooden fences and everything, all kinds of things that had to be repaired over periods of years. And I know that I built my house in that neighborhood, which was already established it's been over 20 years now. But they did the patchwork on what they did, so. The streets didn't fail, it was just time to patch some places. So it's not like everything had to come out and be rebuilt. If the subsurface is done right and the asphalt's done right. The other thing we've done on here is the other plan only had 16-foot wide alleys, service drives, and we're doing 20s. So cars can pass or trucks can pass each other because 16 foot you can't. And on the entrance in from that traffic circle that's on the south side right there up into that big green space, that park area, those traffic lanes on the existing plan were 12 feet from face of curb to face of curb. So if you got a car parking there, I'm not sure how anybody's going to get by them. Squeeze by them. But the service drives are the homeowners association's responsibility, and the service drives are only in the 6,000 square foot lots. So mainly the lots that are fronting the Boulevard Road, because there don't even driveways.
That's the majority of the lots in the development.
Mm-hmm.
and another thing is the way these stub out, the way those streets end, once they get to the end of these areas, how do the garbage trucks when they're picking up, how do they turn around? There's no cul-de-sacs at the end of those streets, correct?
No, the alleys tie in. They tie in each other. They're not dead ends.
Down there on the bottom, you see where the green circle is? Those two that tie in down there. When they get to the end of those, how do they
You're
get
talking
out?
about just above that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just back. In my neighborhood, they back out.
Or so they
'Cause
won't.
that's only-
So they won't turn around. They won't back into people.
That's two houses.
So they won't be backing into people's driveways to turn around.
No, they'll back up and turn around that road right there, come out that road, that public road.
Okay.
It is done all the time, all the time. Actually, a lot of them are a lot longer than that, and they are dead ends, but I don't like the dead ends for them.
Yeah, it's not optimal for sure.
And you can see the school on that exhibit also, and their drive is quite a bit north of ours, north of that, off the football field in there. So across the street's their athletic complex.
So there won't be any kind of red light or anything on McIngvale going in?
I think in the future, and I'm gonna let Nick address that, as build-out happens, the levels of service start changing, and at some point, it triggers a traffic light at our main entrance. And I'll kind of let him explain how that works for it, so we can stay at a high, optimum level of movement. This is, I showed you all this also, this was the 5-minute walk to green space, and there's 5-minute walk all over the place to green space, so. This is the preliminary phasing plan. Obviously, those phases will be probably, those are large phases. Some of them may be cut in half, some of them may be cut in 3 parts, depending on the economy and the market at that time. Retail won't happen on the front end. The only retail that would happen immediately on the front end would be the YMCA. You got to have housetops before you can have retail. So that'll start coming on as time goes by. And we're back to the plan. Now, as I said, we did, as far as addressing the street connections, I think I addressed that. We did it at the city's request. As per our traffic analysis and our traffic study, they're not needed. The cemetery, as far as that goes, we've had 3 survey crews out there now looking, and we can't find any graves on the subject property itself. They're all within that cemetery. And if there were 1 or 2 that did pop up somehow or another, fine, then what we would do, that would be turned into common open space, or it would be gifted back to that church, that area, if it was. But they went out twice, and then we had 1 original boundary survey, they didn't find any either. So, and the traffic, I think the traffic study was the other main issue y'all had last month, was traffic, which rightfully so. And I'll let Nick address that, if that's okay, because he knows more about the traffic than I do. I'll let him talk about that.
Does any of the commissioners have any other questions, Mr. Dalhoff?
I'm sorry?
Any other questions, Mr. Dalhoff?
So, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but on the street situation, the potential for those streets to go down the way we're talking about, does that concern you about the future value of the homes in there?
To the north?
No.
Or the back?
In there, when those service streets start to deteriorate.
Oh, no.
What it's going to do?
No, not at all. It didn't affect mine. Mine went up.
Okay.
I think the worst thing that could happen, I'll be honest with you, I don't care what size lot you have along that boulevard entrance. If you line that thing up with driveways, you're just not doing anything except asking for big trouble. So it's best not to have any driveways, to me, on that boulevard road. And again, that boulevard road did stop right in the center. We've extended all the way back up because it needed to be to carry the traffic. And again, like we said, we took out, I believe it was 175 or so multifamily units out of the deal too. So we'd like to proceed on. Obviously, there is an approved plan on a piece of property. We feel like this is massaged that plan into this, which is much better than that one. And don't, really rather not do the other plan, but because this one just is better all the way, it's updated. So, but we feel it's better. So I'm going to let Nick talk about the traffic, if that's okay.
Any other question, Mr. Dalhoff?
Nicholas Cronin, my address is 3629 College Road, South Haven, Mississippi, with Civil Link Engineering. And I've got 1 single page I was going to pass out to everybody too to kind of help explain what I'm talking about.
This is 41.
And before I really dive off into the details of the traffic, I know that the main question that was asked for us to do was to revise the traffic study to include school traffic across the street. And we have done that. But one point I want to make before I really get started is that the currently approved PUD is 3.2 units to the acre, as well as this PUD that we have before. So this traffic concern we have is a concern with the existing approved PUD. So I just want to make that point that it's a concern with the approved PUD as well as the amended PUD. When we added the school traffic, One thing that did become an issue that we initially did not expect was that during peak hour, during school traffic, and all the cars are coming out onto McIngvale out of the school, it caused the cars leaving the subdivision, Delta Landing, to not be able to get time to get out. So it caused a level of service for and what is in front of y'all is the level of service for the eastbound left turn lane. So the eastbound left turn lane leaving the subdivision dropped to a level service F at 100% build out. You can see what we did is we broke up the study into each chip generation percentage. So at 50% build out, that became level service C. At 75 became level service D, and at 100% build out became level service F. Now this is not McIngvale becomes a level service F. It's the left turn lane leaving the subdivision. So what that told us is that during peak hours, it triggers for a signal to be required because you can see what happens with the signal. Level of service returns back to B during peak hour. And what the developer has proposed to offer is at 50% build out. Now, one thing I do want y'all to keep in mind with this traffic study is we're making a lot of assumptions. We're making assumptions on the traffic for the school. We're making assumptions on the type of commercial developments that are coming, how many restaurants, how many shops, those type of things. We're making assumptions on the residential traffic as well. So there's a lot of assumptions in this. So what the developer is proposing to do is at 50% build out, we will do a true traffic study and do a warrant analysis of the actual intersection with real world traffic, do traffic counts. If that warrant analysis deems that a traffic signal is necessary, he will pay to install a traffic signal at that time. If it says that a traffic signal is not warranted at that time, at 75% build out, we'll update that traffic study with the real world data, real traffic counts at that time. If it's warranted, it will be installed at that time, again at 100%. So we don't want to install that signal until it's warranted. If a warrant analysis does not say a signal is warranted, it doesn't need to be installed. That can hinder traffic more than help at that time. Just like when NDOT and the state of Mississippi installs signals, they don't install them until warrant analysis deem it's warranted. So the developer is agreeing to install the signal, but at the right time. I hope that helps explain it. We don't want to say that at this point with this study, the purpose of me saying that we're making a lot of assumptions in this study is that this study is making assumptions at this time, and we can't say for sure at what time will that warrant a signal.
This study was done just on exiting to McIngvale, didn't account for any traffic going north, right?
That's correct. We assumed in our study that nobody's going north. This is only going to McIngvale. And one thing to keep in mind too, this study is assuming we have 2 exits out on the McIngvale. The original PUD only has 1 main exit with some commercial exits out of parking lots. But so technically the current approved PUD could be a worse situation traffic study for this exit of the subdivision. And one more point to the streets that were brought up about the alleyways. The alleyways would be built to the same standards as a city street. You would use the same amount of soil, cement, and asphalt for the alleyways.
So you can kind of expect the life out of them that you would out of which still need to maintain, still get potholes, still
got to maintain it, and how you would maintain it by collecting those HOA dues over time, which should have money in a chest to pay for those maintenance at the time.
Okay.
Just want to clear that up. They're built the same. The only thing the difference is they're narrower than a city street. Doesn't have, full speed traffic and that kind of thing. But as far as the structure goes, the structure is the same.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Cook?
All right. Thank you.
Anyone in support or against this item, please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety.
Jeff Hobbs, 1055 Wooten Road in Nesbit. Thank y'all very much for allowing me to speak. I've got a lot of concerns about this development, so does the community. I'm not going to address all of them because someone else is going to after me. But I'm going to give you a background on what happened. I don't think all of y'all were here back in 2007. We were annexed. Nesbit was. I can speak for just about everyone behind me in the whole community. No one was really aware that we were getting annexed. The city did the minimum requirements, was put an ad in, I believe, the DeSoto Times, if I'm not mistaken. But the majority of us didn't find out till officers were actually, making their rounds, and you had to ask, hey, what are you doing here? We're used to the sheriff's department. Oh, you've been annexed. So we weren't even aware we'd been annexed. And then the same year, they're going to approve a PUD. We weren't even aware of this PUD. You got 4 aldermen that approved it, and all 4 aldermen were born and raised here in Hernando. None of them were invested at all in Nesbit, and we had no representation whatsoever. Now, don't misunderstand me. These 4 aldermen, they have a lot of integrity, and I have a lot of respect for all of them. They're good men, and that's not my point. My point is that we didn't have representation here, and my request is that that the city get an attorney general's opinion on it, and also the statute of limitations on this PUD. I mean, how long is this PUD good for? Mr. Planner, can you tell me, how long is this PUD good for?
So after a year, the board does have the power to reconsider the application. So our ordinance, I think Mr. Dan's going to talk about that a little bit, is after a year, the language in the ordinance says the board has the power to consider if they so choose. But to answer your question directly, the land use is that way until it's changed.
So in other words, we could be here in 2037 and it would still be the same.
Without board action, yes, sir.
Right. So, and the demographics changed tremendously, and it could still be approved just like it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, see, to me, that just doesn't seem right or legal. I don't know. I mean, imagine you being just north of this development and Pleasant Hill, the infrastructure's not ready for it, and it's not going to be ready for it. They're talking about a build out in 8 years. We're not going to be ready for it. The water displacement from the high school, from the development, from all the other cities or subdivisions adjacent to it, the new complex over there, the Madison Lakes, all that water is going to Hurricane Creek. I mean, there's going to be a issue with that. Also, the traffic, of course, I know they're addressing the traffic on McIngvale, but what about Pleasant Hill? This school is going to produce a lot of traffic. All these other subdivisions are going to produce the traffic, but the infrastructure's not ready for it. If any of y'all ever go north on 55 about 7:30 in the morning? Y'all see how it bottlenecks? Well, what is it going to do when we put 1,800 more cars on it? And that's not even counting Madison Lakes. They're the same thing. Well, all I ask y'all to do, at the end of the night, you vote yay or nay, whatever you vote. All I ask you to do is address all the citizens' concerns first before y'all vote. I appreciate y'all letting me speak. Thank you.
Anyone else in support of this?
My name is Dan Bearden, and I live at 1065 Froney. And I have a presentation, if y'all could pull that up. And if you could put it into presentation mode, that'd be a big help too.
think that's the PowerPoint at the bottom.
There we go.
Yeah, and if you hit F5, it'll go into presentation mode. Maybe.
Is that what you need? You have to click.
Yeah, do I point at your computer?
No.
At the screen, okay. So I thank you very much for giving.
I think you can point either way and it'll,
I'm sorry?
I think you can just point either way and it'll
Okay.
move.
Thank you very much for giving the citizens here a chance to respond to this development. And as I go through my little presentation here, I just want you to understand, I'm double-minded here. Mr. Hobbs pointed out that a lot of us are concerned about the idea of going back to an action that happened 12 years ago, and so that's kind of like the conception of the baby. But I also have concerns about the haircut the baby's going to get. So when I'm talking, I'll be going back and forth between those two concepts. I try not to confuse you, but of course you can interrupt and ask me any questions. All my neighbors that I've talked to, we're not anti-development at all. We understand that a nice big plot of ground like that is going to have something on it, even if it stays the way it is for a while, in a thriving area like Hernando. So we're not anti-development. We are pro really good development, meaning that it's good for the community, that it's good for our neighborhoods north of this development, and it really puts a shine on our existence here. So just our attitude, I think I come across a little more confrontational than most of my colleagues here, so I apologize for that. I'm really not angry. I just feel energized about this discussion. So just to give you a quick overview of these major areas of concern, number one is use of existing roads, and I'm glad to hear Mr. Dalhoff's comments about that, but we'll put nails in that coffin. Also, we still have concerns about Bethlehem Cemetery. We're going to talk about the environmental impact of taking 250 acres of farm and turning it into a metroplex kind of. The housing density, we'll talk about that. The other concern that we have is rental property, and maybe you guys do understand what's going on in our community with large companies coming in and buying every house that's available at a premium, and we're going to talk about that. And finally, we're going to talk about PUD requirements. I know I'm not as familiar with the building code or the codes as you might be with PUD, but I found some really interesting things in there. So first of all, let's talk about use of existing roads. The plan calls for access roads into and through the northern neighborhoods. On the Nesbitt Estate side, it's really good news that you've cut out Froney. I appreciate that. But our neighbors in the other adjacent neighborhoods are also concerned about this. The roads that are there just are not compatible with current code. When you start putting fire trucks or heavier service trucks down those, it causes problems. And so at the very least, that needs to be addressed in some way, I would think. Last time we learned that there was no credible study for the design, so what I did was I looked at the 2007 minutes of the approval meeting with the Board of Aldermen, and there was some traffic information in there. It showed an additional approximately 1,200 trips per day on Brody Road. And just to give you an idea of what that means, currently, if you go look at traffic numbers, Pleasant Hill Road is 3,200 trips a day. So you're talking about taking a sleepy little dead-end road and turning it into half of the traffic that's on Pleasant Hill. That just doesn't seem like a very good idea to me. The Alderman also requested information on access using the two undeveloped studs. And this is kind of what bothers me. In those 15 years since then, the developer has made zero effort or made zero progress, maybe they've tried, I don't know, to secure right-of-way through those stubs. Now, if you're a logical person and you look at that map, those stubs are awfully attractive. One's more attractive than the others. The one further to the east actually has less development around it, so that might be the one to look at, but I don't understand how the developers have not pursued that in good faith. I don't think they were short of time to do that. But so now we need a new traffic study, including the new high school and Pleasant Hill Road. So I appreciate the steps that you took, but I think we need to know what happens when Pleasant Hill Road is figured in, because we do have traffic numbers for that road. Bethlehem Cemetery. The construction is close to the cemetery. Now, I never tried to imply last time I spoke that the cemetery or any graves were on your property, so I'm sorry if I sent you down a rabbit trail. I didn't mean to do that, but I'm glad you looked, because I don't know for sure, and accidents happen when you're burying people.
It was worth the double check.
Okay, but what I'm concerned about and what my neighbors are concerned about is that that'll help increase access to that cemetery. And that may eventually cause some kind of encroachment, either dumping or vandalism and things like that. So I think a reasonable thing is to get the developers to think about actions they could take to prevent the desecration or vandalism of this kind of secluded cemetery there. And so I think it would be a good community faith-building exercise to think about what could be done. I don't know, I don't do those things. I just know that I've seen some very nice-looking cemeteries around here that you know you're not going to go in and vandalize. They do show, it's page 53 of the 60-page document that's in your current submittal from them to show that they went and looked at the ground there. Now, there is I didn't make much about this, but, oh yeah, there are also some natural springs there that come out. This is anecdotal for me. I didn't know these were there, but there is some complex hydrology there, because there seems to be natural springs that come out in that northwest corner of the property. And if you're going to do proper hydrology, you need to account for those. So this is the slide. The red box is the cemetery, 2.6 acres. There is I think that's a 30-foot piece of ground going to the farm there that comes right off of Froney. And then the subject property comes to the corner there where the section marker is. Now, if you look at their drawings in their packets, it's not drawn that way. That is straight from the county tax map. So my question would be, kind of informally, are you sure your surveyor's got that corner pin right? Because you're drawing it different than the tax maps show, and we need to sort that out.
We had double check.
Okay. I look forward to seeing that. All right, so let's talk about my biggest bugaboo is the environmental impact of this development. There is no environmental impact statement or even an inventory of assets for this property. That's kind of standard fare for a project of this size, I believe. They're talking about destroying 75 acres of natural forest. The woods there are at least 300 feet wide at the narrowest point. So we're talking a lot of existing woodland that will be destroyed to do this. And then they're going to replace it with a 50-foot greenery barrier. I think that's still on the plans, but at that scale, I can't really tell, and it wasn't mentioned by them tonight. So that's a lot of woods, and there's a lot of wildlife in there. It's going to be catastrophic to that. I think there's supposed to be a city tree ordinance. Maybe there's not. I'm not sure. We need a survey of assets in there. Are there trees that are historic in some sense, in age or stature? And just anecdotally, we know that the wildlife includes deer, owls, hawks, turkeys. And because there are bald eagles in this area, there's a good possibility that there are some bald eagle nests in that 75 acres there. And that is an endangered species, of course, and that might cause some really serious problems down the road. You can't know that unless you go looking or have some professionals, non-biased professionals, look at that type of thing. So the other thing that catches my eye is you're going to replace about 250 acres of natural drainage and runoff farmland with almost 150 acres, and that's my estimate, maybe they want to correct that later, of impermeable surfaces. This is asphalt, rooftops, driveways, all the hard surfaces that will replace the absorption and transport of water by that land. That's a big change. So the dramatic changes to hydric soils and aquatic environment are going to happen. And that needs to be properly planned for. I think we all know places where that wasn't done very well, and you get property flooding, you get streets that are impassable, and so forth. There's no discussion of compliance with state and federal laws with respect to the Freeze Corners Hurricane Creek watershed, and that watershed contains the impaired water body Hurricane Creek. This creek is already in trouble with the current development along it. I think as conscientious city people, we ought to make sure that we don't do more to damage that creek. And so that would involve some very serious discussions and planning and interaction with MDEC. The plan also calls, if I am correct, requires backfilling of 100-year floodplains and building stormwater reservoirs. Again, that'll require state approval through MDEC. Also, the Clean Water Act may be required to be checked with because you're going to, again, be having tremendous amounts of runoff from this impervious surface. This increased discharge into Hurricane Creek, which ends up being in Arkabutler Lake, in case you don't know which way the creek runs there. I'm sure you all do. I didn't, so I checked. It may require NPDES permit. That's a federal permit from the EPA to let you discharge pollutants, meaning in this case we would have gas products from automobiles and motorcycles and all of those, the asphalt from the roads, pesticides from these nice green manicured lawns we're going to be having, and all of the things that people use in their neighborhoods will end up in the creek eventually, or in the lakes, in the retention ponds. And talking about a deferred expense in 20 or 30 years when somebody comes along and says that retention pond is contaminated, it's a hazardous waste site now, you're going to have to dredge that according to all the EPA regs. This is going to be happening all across the country here because developers, instead of doing proper stormwater treatment and transport to safe places, they're building these retention ponds and they collect. That's the whole point of it. They collect the sediment and hazardous waste that comes off of people's property after they start doing more than just farming. So we need to check with what EPA would require. I'm almost there. Housing density, well, if you play the developer's calculation technique, yeah, you do come up with 3.2 units per acre. However, if you look at the wording in the 2007 approval, it says that the housing density, the residential density, not the overall density, the residential density cannot exceed 4 units per acre. If you do it that way, you calculate your, this plan has 4.1 units per acre. Although I heard you say, heard the designer say there's a different number of units, so there might be some change in the number. I calculated that 4.1 off of the previously presented plan, so we'll see how that comes up. In fact, the residential density in the village center is over 23 units per acre. And if you look at the code, it says anything, any multifamily housing, I think it can't be more than 20 units per acre. So we got problems here with density that needs to get resolved. And contrasting that with the areas to the north, which are AR1, I believe is what it is, by the law, by the zoning code, that has to be under 1 unit per acre. So that's a big change in density, population density, and so that might cause social upheaval and things. And again, the 2007 approval meeting required a maximum residential density of 4 units per acre. Touching on the issue of these companies that come in and buy every house that's for sale at a premium and then turn it into a rental property, that's not precluded in anything that's been presented so far. At the 2000 zoning change approval meeting, the Board of Aldermen required that owner occupancy only of dwellings via covenants would be required. Well, maybe you guys have seen people trying to resolve covenant issues. It's just not a pretty sight. It's nearly impossible. People don't have the money to hire the lawyers they need to do that, so covenants are not any good for this. In the current market, we see people bulk buying properties. It ends up with elevated rents because the market has no flexibility. And if your goal of having this property developed as medium density, 0 lot line buildings to get low cost housing, it's not going to happen if the rental people come in. Maybe you've heard people complain about what happens when these companies buy 2 or 3 or 5 or a dozen homes in their neighborhood. They don't maintain them. They kick people out as soon as the check isn't there. They really are not good business partners, and we need to think about what we can do to thwart that. So the city can indeed require deed restrictions with suitable language to force people to have owner-occupied properties. The code lets you set, for a PUD, it lets you set whatever reasonable requirements you need to make the property valuable. So I would encourage the city to do that. Okay, so now we get to the is it a baby or not type questions. There are a couple of requirements for PUD development that have not been addressed. The preliminary phasing plan in the submission states that commercial development phasing will depend on double quotes retail demand. That's not in the zoning guide or the zoning ordinance. The thing that's in the zoning ordinance is they say you have to finish a certain amount of construction of residences before the first commercial development can occur. Now, I don't know, again, y'all have the history, I don't. I don't know what has happened with other PUDs before, but this is kind of black and white, and they use things like shall be constructed, and in the federal government, when the Congress says shall, that's you know, daddy telling a kid to go to the bedroom, you know, get out of here. Shall is a strong word, and so since 25% of the buildings would be about, 160 homes, so it looks like they have to build 100 homes before the first commercial development can go in, and that needs to be clarified and maintained by the alderman. Also, the 2007 plan, in my opinion, isn't valid because some of the requirements for having a PUD approval weren't met, and the details are written there. If you don't build on the, make progress and start building out the plan at the end of 2 years, if you can show a good reason, you can come back for annual increments of that zoning and the development plan. Now, it says that the thing that the alderman can do is change the zoning back to what it was, and that's not necessarily what is catching. What it means is you go from an approved development plan to one that hasn't been approved. So you don't have to, the aldermen don't have to change it back to A, agriculture. They just have to say that since these annual requests were not submitted or approved, there is no approved development plan. Now, that's stopping the baby from being born, at least. I think what we have here is a situation where they want to go and modify. You would have to throw out the modification language and do a full submittal. And, maybe at this point, the alderman would want to either consider going back to agricultural or some other zoning that they might choose. So here's some requests. So number one, we think that requiring a full environmental impact statement is necessary, signed off by the proper state and federal agencies. We need to appeal to higher authorities to determine whether these lapses in the PUD approval process truly affect either the zoning and or the previously approved plan. We need to get the rental problem taken care of. Perhaps the city attorney can come up with some language to put into deed restrictions, not covenants, but deed restrictions to reasonably limit occupancy to owner-occupied homes. Your actions tonight, you can table the request, and that would maybe come about because you might want the developers to think about some of these questions that I've raised. Or you could deny the request because it fails all three tests according to these issues I've raised here, any one of which is enough for you to deny this amendment. I'm almost through there, but then today I had another thought. You guys, the city depends on taxes, tax revenues, so if you're, I think tonight you're looking at PL 1608, which is a commercial project. It's in a region zone C2. The appraised value of the unimproved land is $40,500 for a 4.5 acre plot. So that means they're valuing, the valuation of that is about $9,000 an acre. And right now the tax bill due for 2022 is $842.85. So that's about $187 per acre of tax. All right, this action, it's zoned A on the tax map. I think I need to repeat that. It's zoned A on the tax map. It's not zoned PUD on the tax map. And it's not subdivided on the tax map. So the appraised value of that unimproved land is $267,000 or so for 513.5 acres. And so that ends up being about a value of about $520 per acre, which makes sense for farmland. That means somebody can work that land. So the new tax, the net tax for this year is $5,500 plus change on that property. So this property is zoned agriculture. It's been taxed as agriculture, but if it had been properly zoned as PUD, which is commercial property, and if it had been taxed at commercial property tax rates, the tax bill for all 513 acres would be $96,000, but half of that, because that's what we're really talking about, 252 acres, is $47,000. So that's a huge tax concession that Hernando has made. Huge. And I don't understand it. I don't know how that concession was made, who approved it, and where is the documentation where somebody in authority discussed that? I would like to know, because if I could get my tax bill cut to 10% of what it's supposed to be, I'd be a happy retired man, I tell you. So either there's a huge tax deficiency or the zoning is wrong, and we need to figure that out. One last thought, usage. That Delta Landing PUD has been consistently used for farming for generations. It hasn't stopped, even though it was zoned as PUD, if we believe the 2007 approval. So then the question is farming an allowed usage of PUD properties? Well, it might be if in the original PUD rezoning request, it included that as an option. They didn't. All right, there's no evidence that this was a proposed usage. So somebody has let land be miszoned, undertaxed, and misused for a long time, and something needs to sort that out. And we probably could think about going back to zero. So the real questions are, If the land is PUD, why not tax it for its commercial undeveloped value? We haven't been doing that. If the land is PUD, why allow an unscheduled use, farming? We haven't stopped that. And finally, if the land is truly agriculture and getting the benefits of low tax rates, which we'd like farmers to have lower tax rates, how does it get to be treated as a PUD now? The land cannot be both PUD and agriculture at the same time, and this is a nasty knot that somebody needs to sort out, in my opinion, because it sounds like we need to go back to square one before we talk about how big a lot or how deep the lake is or whatever. So thank you so much for your time. I'd really be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate your generosity.
Anyone else in support or against this item, please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous. My name's Lauren Olmstead. I live at 1080 Dogwood Hollow Drive. I am here representing my neighborhood. We have a petition that we have prepared as far as cutting through to the neighborhood. I don't really know what the purpose is, especially after listening to the engineer, but there are a few residents that built that still live in the neighborhood, but the majority of us are new. And we bought specifically because of it being a single dead-end street. We have young kids. I mean, there was a comment earlier about everybody wishes they could live at a dead-end road, and we actually have that. So I'm just trying to figure out what the options are or how it was approved or why it was changed. Sorry, I'm a little nervous still. I spoke with Sean Green, who I work with at Dream Home Construction. I do his design work, and he assured me that the developer is a great developer, that he is a good man also, both of them are. And my whole income is based on development and growth, so I have no problem with that. It's just taking something that was a small neighborhood and turning it into, I mean, part of a huge, huge space. I just feel like it's unnecessary. And if the infrastructure is not there for it, then it needs to be shelved until it is ready. So I guess that's it. Sorry.
How you guys doing? I'm Robert Gibson. I live at Hall Road, 1372. So this is my first type meeting. This is the first time I've been through this, and I have a couple questions. Which roads, in layman's terms, are they trying to open up? Because I'm representing Hall Road. I've got a signed petition from everyone at Hall Road that we're against the opening of the road.
Hall Road's not.
So it's not. So which roads are, for everybody else, because I'm kind of confused, which roads are you guys trying to open?
What's on the proposal tonight is Brody and Dogwood Hollow.
Okay.
Last meeting, it also included Froney, which the developer has done away with that.
Okay. So what is the potential 5 years down the road that this changes? So these are not going to be emergency entrance exits? These are just going to...
Not at this current presentation. What's proposed tonight is a actual connection, but it's pending the developer made. The city attorney is looking to see if Dogwood Hollow is able to even be connected
Okay.
legally.
So if there is a change, will we know about it as residents? I mean, so if you guys change your mind, will there be another meeting? How does this work? I guess I'm new to this, so how would that work?
It would have to be a different plan submitted and approved.
Okay. Okay.
If there's any changes, like now, they're trying to change from the PUD that was approved previously in 2007. It's a new developer, new builder. They changed what they're presenting.
Okay. Sounds good. Can I give you guys this petition?
Take it, take it.
All right, thank you, guys.
Anyone else in support of this? All right. Any questions from the commission?
Austin, I did have a couple. All right, so a couple of things this gentleman touched on earlier. One was the being able to put in there limiting like the deeds to where it would prevent rental. Is that something that can be done, or is that accurate, or is that not?
So, the city can develop an ordinance to regulate rental housing. We don't currently have that. Now, for the city to require that he deed restrict there be no rental, I do see potential litigation, but I have to defer to the city attorney.
Okay, all right.
I can read from the zoning ordinance if you want.
That's been reviewed before, and they've said that they could do that.
Ultimately,
The
yes.
zoning ordinance says that the city of Hernando may require other special improvements as they are required if they are deemed reasonable and essential, and may require that appropriate deed restrictions to be filed enforceable by the city of Hernando for 20 years. That's on page 77 of the zoning ordinance of amendment.
Okay. Also, going back to the original plan, did the original plan have any of those private service roads that we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
It does have those?
Almost the same, exact same places. Where we took out the townhomes, we had service drives in there. That's the only additional ones.
Okay. Because it was hard to tell because on the original one, it didn't list as being private.
It is hard to read.
Any other questions by the commissioners? Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen of rezoning requested by Bob Dalhoff, Dalhoff Thomas Design, representing the owner of the property, for a zoning map amendment preliminary development plan approval, Delta Landing PUD, located on the west side of McIngvale Road, south of Pleasant Hill, in Section 31, Township 2, Range 7, based on findings 1, 2, 3.
Is there a second? All right, seems like that motion didn't pass, so do we have another motion?
To the Board of Aldermen rezoning request by Mr. Bob Dalhoff, Dalhoff Thomas Design, representing the owner of the property for zoning map amendment preliminary development plan approval, Delta Landing PUD, located on the west side of McIngvale Road, south of Pleasant Hills, in Section 31, Township 2, Range 7, based upon the following findings. 1, 2, 3.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Clark,
Nay.
Commissioner Safley,
Yay.
Commissioner Max, Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen.
Aye.
The motion to deny this item passes.
And so this will be heard by the Board of Aldermen on the 21st, so next Tuesday night at 6 p.m. for final decision.
I think it'll be a good time to go.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Hall, he's going to run to the restroom.
Oh, yeah, keep me out a little bit.
Appreciate what y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate y'all.
Restroom break.
I know it's a tough
He's going to
night. Everything, but it's important.
Probably hit me in about 15 minutes.
Understand, yes, sir.
I got something to say. I didn't get to say it. Brother Ray,
isn't gonna be extended out. The road is already a stub out. When it was constructed, it was stubbed out for future expansion. Well, no, when it was built, the roads are built for future expansion so that they can connect for future development as the city.
Green T C2. Request to rezone 26 acres from agricultural to C2 highway commercial. The subject property is located on the west side of Tchulahoma Road, north of Green T Road, east and south of I-269 in Section 32, Township 2 and Range 7. Greg Davis, Davis Law, MS PLLC, representing Michael and Jennifer Tilghman, the owners. Mr. Cardozo, would you give us the planning staff's report and comments?
Yes, sir. This is PL 1698. As you mentioned, it's a request to rezone 26 acres from A agricultural district to C2 highway commercial district. Parcel numbers listed in your staff report, and a full description of the C2 uses are also listed in your staff report. The future land use map currently adopted identifies the property as master plan residential low density, and there's a full description of that in your staff report. of what master plan low density means and can mean for the commercial development of the property. The three discussion items are the same as our last application: how this conforms to the general development plan, how this district is either inappropriate or improper, and what changes have occurred in the area that were not anticipated by the general development plan that have altered the basic character of the area. And the applicant has provided responses to each of those questions, which are listed in your staff report. Property to the south was, at our April Planning Commission meeting, was approved to C2 zoning, highway commercial, on the abutting property to Green Tea Road. And as I mentioned, I did include copies of A and C2 in your staff report to give detailed possibilities of the proposed uses that could go there. I did include proposed motions to approve, deny, and/or table in your staff report, and there's support and documentation on site maps, location maps, and a legal description of the property of exactly what's being proposed to be rezoned. The applicant, Greg Davis, is here representing Mr. and Ms. Tilghman tonight, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Any question, Mr. Cardoza, from the commission?
What is the new comprehensive plan show this area as being?
Mixed use, and that's actually, to plug it, this Thursday night, we're having a comprehensive plan meeting to discuss the future land use plan, and I do expect some changes around the interchanges, but mixed use is the primary proposal.
Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety?
Yes, my name's Greg Davis. My office is at 301 Mosher Street here in Hernando. I'm here tonight to talk about rezoning a piece of land that I call sandwiched in between I-269 and C2 zoning. This board back in April rezoned the southernmost part to C2. Prior to that, had zoned another parcel, C2, for Mr. Drumright, which he's located a baseball type facility out there. All three of these properties will be in conjunction working together on the development Mr. Drumright's in, so that I know there was some concern at one time about access to Tchulahoma because of how narrow it is and things of that nature, but the main entrance to this development with all three parcels will be right there on Green Tea Road to the front, using Mr. Drumright. He is part of the overall comprehensive plan. It's been upscale commercial development that's going to take place out there. Excuse me. It just seems to me that, and the zoning does allow it for the mixed use, and it's easier, in my opinion, for the city and the planners and the aldermen and y'all to see an entire development of all three parcels coming in at one time versus a hodgepodge of the first application and another application and another application. So that's one of the advantages of taking it to the C2 zoning. You'll also have a commercial corridor from Green Tea to I-269, which with I-269 visibility, the area will be more attractive to commercial development. It will allow for a secondary exit, not the main entrance, but a secondary exit to Tchulahoma, the main entrance off Green Tea Road. And again, this is the 20-something acres that is sandwiched in between commercial C2 zoning now and I-269. So in my opinion, it's not really conducive to agricultural or residential development because of the visibility and location of where it is and the zoning that's changed around.
Any questions for the applicant?
So there will be a secondary access to the property on Tchulahoma Road?
Right. But you can see from the, I don't know if you have the maps on, there's not that much road frontage, not much property access to Tchulahoma from that property, so the main entrance will be to the south on Green Tea.
How are you going to access this property from Green Tea Road?
Through Mr. Drumright's property, there's a T-shaped.
Okay.
See the
Yes.
T-shaped looking thing?
Yes.
That's Mr. Drumright.
Right.
That's all part of the,
And we're going to go through all three of those
Yeah.
properties?
right. The property just to the north is already owned by my client, and y'all rezoned it C2. This is just the final piece of the development.
North, I don't get it.
Yeah, and Mr. Drumright's involved in the development of the other.
Which way's north?
This way's north. And so they're gonna do a service road through this to access. So they'll have
Any
access.
questions for the
All
applicant?
gonna be developed together?
That's what he's saying.
Yes. The the reason they didn't come to you all at once is because they had different buyers that they were dealing with. And it took a little while longer to secure this parcel that we're in here tonight about, because it had several areas that had to be signed off. But it will be one development. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in support or against this item, please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety.
So I'm new to this meeting.
Name and address.
My name and address, William Cheney, 515 Tchulahoma Road. All I know is I was coming home a month or so ago and this big red sign popped up on Tchulahoma, right next to where I just bought my house 6 months ago. So I just don't know what it means, you know, for me and my property. I've got an acre and a half of land there. I look out the back and I see Gatorade Field House over there in the distance. I see two big ponds out there between it. And I see a very narrow road. That's a dead-end road. I heard one of the residents talk about living on a dead-end road, you know. It was very appealing to me to move down to Hernando, out of Cordova after a lot of years up there. And I just don't understand what it's about. I just need to understand what it's going to mean for my property as a resident, and if there's going to be more traffic on the road, and what does it mean to my property value. There's a lot of unknowns that I don't know, and just I wanted to come tonight, me and my wife, and just try to understand what does it mean to me, because the big red sign is right next to my house. So that's really where I'm at. I mean, that's what it's all about. So to say I'm for it or against it, I'm against a lot of traffic. I'm against a commercial entrance right next to my house. So that's why I'm here, just for a better understanding of what it means to me. There's only like 7 or 8 houses down that whole road, right? And us being such new residents, you know, to the city, born and raised in DeSoto County, right? Born in Hernando a lot of years ago. Very excited to come down here, and then this big red sign pops up next to my home of agriculture to C2. So does it mean something way across the water there that's not going to affect me? I don't care. Does it mean a secondary entrance that's cars coming by my house all day, every day, or when it gets busy on the weekends and all that? That's what I need to know more about. And I just need to know how I get there. So that's where I stand. Okay.
Anyone else in support or against this item? All right. Any questions from the commissioners?
I got a question. Mr. Davis,
Is there any way you can kind of give us an idea? Because, I mean, all we just see is a rezoning, and there's 100 different things for C2 use. Is there any kind of rough thing that you could say? I mean, I know you can't say exactly what.
Can't say a lot at this point, but there are some things in the work, and to the gentleman's concern, that's only 50 foot that we've got connecting it, so it's obviously not going to be a major entrance into this subdivision development. I know they have talked, and I guess I can say this out loud, that there's talks of a higher-end restaurant, for one thing, that's going to be coming in. If I told you the names would be similar to Flight, Porch and Parlor up in Memphis, the same ownership group is looking for something similar to that. They'll probably be looking, you know, for other upper-end commercial projects to go along with that restaurant. I can't tell you a whole lot right now.
Right, yeah. I mean, just something.
Yeah, it's not going to be your typical commercial. It's not going to be your typical commercial development. And to the gentleman's concern also, I'm sure when we come back with the commercial plan development, there are going to be some rear yard requirements to protect him and buffer him from anything that's going to be taking place, and we'll make sure that that gets taken care of. But yeah, we don't want anybody to have bought a house and then be sorry that they bought it either.
Mr. Cardozi, you said that the future development plan has this area for mixed use. Is that the
soon-to-be adopted plan.
soon-to-be adopted plan, right? So it's mixed use. So does this C2, does that fit into that?
It has available uses, commercial zoning. We do expect commercial zoning around most of our interchanges. This parcel in particular, I don't know the exact future land use plan, but generally speaking, the interchanges are expected to be some sort of commercial.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a motion to approve, deny, and table this item?
Let me ask just one more question. Property that's south of it that was rezoned, right? I know we talked about access to it from Green Tea also. Is there some type of easement through the property formally, or just?
No, the T-shaped development, Mr. Drumwright's, will be part of this development. He is a partner in the commercial development.
Okay, so the owner.
The owner of that T-shaped is partnering with my clients to make it all one big project, so that when we come back, you'll have it all laid out for you.
Gotcha, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve or deny this item? Or table?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen for rezoning requested by Greg Davis representing Michael and Jennifer Tilghman. I hope I'm saying that right. The owner of the property of 26 acres parcel of land from its current zoning in the A Agricultural District to the C2 Highway Commercial District, subject property parcel number 20793 20000000040 is located on the west side of Tchulahoma Road, north of Green Tea Road, and east of McIngvale Road in Section 32, Township 2 South, Range 7 West, based on the following 1, 2, and 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Mouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to approve this item passes. The next item is PL 1699 Mount Pleasant Heights, Section I. Request for final plat approval of 1.1 acres. The subject property is located on the west side of Mount Pleasant Road, south of Riley Street in Section 18, Township 3, Range 7. Joe Frank Lauderdale representing the owner of the property. Mr. Cardozo, would you give us the staff plan and his comments and report, please?
Yes, sir. We actually have 3 separate one-lot finals on this agenda for Section I, Section J, and Section H, and they were submitted as separate applications just because they weren't continuous. They don't touch, but they're all part of the same piece of property. So if you'd like to save some time, I could read them all together. And
Let's do that.
Okay. PL 1699, 1701, and 1702 are 3 phases of the Mount Pleasant Heights subdivision, I, J, and H. The 3 lots respectively are 1.1 acres, 0.92 acres, and 0.51 acres, all a part of the Lauderdale tract off of Mount Pleasant Road. The property is zoned R12, so the minimum lot size in that zoning district is 12,000 square feet. So all 3 of these proposals do meet the minimum lot square footage as proposed. The front, side, and rear setbacks are 25 feet, 5 for a sum of 15 on the side, and 20 foot in the rear for all 3 lots. And none of the subject property lies within the designated flood zone. This is a final plat request, and so this recommendation will go in front of the Board of Aldermen next Tuesday on the 21st. And so, again, this is Section I, 1.1 acres, Section J, 0.92 acres, and Section H, .51 acres, and the reason they weren't all put together is just because they don't physically touch, but they're on the same parcel. I did put a proposed motion in your staff reports, and there's 10 standard subdivision approval criteria listed. I do request you make part of your motion if you so see fit. And all 3 plats are listed with site maps and location maps in your staff report.
Any question, Mr. Cardozo? Applicant, please come forward, state your name and address in its entirety.
My name is Sam Lauderdale, 2275 Mount Pleasant Road, one of the owners. Anybody have a question?
Question for Mr. Lauderdale?
Okay.
Anyone in support or against this item, please come forward, state your name and address in its entirety. So when they make this motion, they'll just name all the plats, all the items at one time and make one big motion?
If you want to include specifically Section I, just all the lot sizes as well, just so it's very clear in the motion.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item? These items.
This is 1699, 1701, and 1702, is that
Yes, sir.
right? Okay.
So we're approving all or disapproving all 3?
I'll make a motion. I hope I can get this motion correct.
It can be complicated, but
I make a motion to grant final plat approval to Joe Frank Lauderdale for Mount Pleasant Heights, Section I approval of 1.10 acres, and Section J, 0.92 acres, and Section H, 0.51 acres, subject to standard conditions 1 through 10.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to approve these 3 items passed. Next item is PL 1700 Creekside height variance. Request for a variance to the allowable height. The subject property is located on the north side of Creekside Boulevard, east of McIngvale Road, west of Mason Drive North in Section 17, Township 3, Range 7. Sam Patel, representing owner. Mr. Cardozo, would you give us your staff plan and report and comments?
yes, sir, this is PL 1700. In the request, it says 4-story hotel. It is a 5-story hotel request. So Mr. Sam Patel is requesting a 5-story hotel with a maximum height of 65 feet. The allowable height in the C2 district is 35 feet, so it would exceed by 30 feet. The hotel, a Town Place Suites, is an unplatted lot of 2.7 acres on north side of Creekside Boulevard, east of McIngvale. In the discussion of your staff report, the criteria for variance approval, I'll read those briefly just for approval or denial criteria. That there are special conditions or circumstances that's peculiar to the land structures a building is involved. That the literal enforcement of the provisions of these standards would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. Special conditions or circumstances don't result from actions of the applicant, are not based on economic considerations, and that this variance would not confer on the applicant any special privilege otherwise denied by this ordinance to other land structures or buildings. The applicant did provide responses to each of those 4 questions, and I provided a site plan and a building elevation and a proposed color elevation of what the hotel would look like. The site, unlike the variance that was approved a few months ago to the west of the site is oriented east to west rather than north to south. Due to the shape of the site, and there's a non-disturbed buffer on the eastern side, which is required to be maintained. So to to keep the building windows away from the neighbors to the east is kind of the idea behind the orientation of the site. The request for the variance, as I mentioned, is to go 30 feet above the 35-foot minimum height to allow the 5-story, 65-foot hotel. There's a site map and location map and zoning map in your staff report, and the applicant's available, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Questions for Mr. Cados?
So this is a totally different application and stuff differently than what we did back in September for the Holiday Inn that was on part of this land.
Yes, sir. This piece is just east of what that Holiday Inn site was.
That was a 50-foot.
Yes, sir. I think it's
Maximum
53.
4-story.
And the 65, all these measurements I did confirm was top of parapet. And so the 53 on the previous application was the top of the parapet. And in this application, the 65 is top of parapet. And what that is the screening piece that has utilities.
That was a 4-story hotel then, and this is a 5-story now.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So is that other plan that's a no-go, no deal?
Well, this is an additional hotel.
But it's on the same property.
It is. The other one's, it's split in half. So the Holiday Inn property is on the remaining, I think, 2 acres, and this is an additional 2 acres just to the east of it. So if you look on this color rendering here, where the address is assigned, you can see a faint green line in between it.
Right.
That's the preliminary tax rolls. That lot to the west is where the Holiday Inn would go, where the address has been assigned.
Right.
And the land just to the east of that is where this is proposed.
This would be an additional to the Holiday Inn.
Yes, sir.
Another question, Mr. Cados?
And it's closer to commercial.
Applicant, please come forward and state your name and address in this entirety.
I'm not Sam Patel. I'm TJ Cates. I'm a development consultant. I work for Mr. Sam. I got a couple things I could say. Thanks for your time. Happy Valentine's, everybody. I know it's going to be happy time when we all get home. We did go to a little bit taller because we want to keep the green space. We're taking care of the trees, the creek, everything like that, because I live in Hernando. I live at 230, Highway 51, 35 acres. I love the woods. I like the trees. What I did was I was trying to think, and I did Google it, to see what are the most common reasons why somebody would not want a tall building next to their neighborhood. Because when I moved back from Nashville 2 years ago, we actually had a contract on a house in that neighborhood, and it's a great sense of community, even without an HOA, so it's pretty cool. There's a creek, and there's some trees, and I saw how tall is this hotel. So I called a buddy of mine, a licensed drone operator, and I said, can you know how to measure trees? He did. So our hotel is going to be 65 feet high, as it hides all the air conditioning and everything in the top. We turned the hotel sideways so there's no view from the hotel rooms into the backyards next door. And we set it back, I think we're 84 feet from the property line. When we measured the trees, we're at 65 feet. The trees are actually 88 feet tall, which leaves us a little bit, like 20-something feet difference. So I feel like with all the green space, the excessive landscaping, the way we flipped the hotel, hopefully that's going to overcome the tall hotel. But I mean, everybody wants to be in Hernando. I'm here. Everybody else wants to be here, but you still have to preserve it for the residents that want to keep it the same way that it is. The way I look at it, and I used to be the HOA president at Windstone and Olive Branch, and we fought this for commercial, was coming into our sweet little neighborhood. And it's just part of it. But I would rather see it be than a C-store, a Sonic, something with the heavy, steady traffic. So, I mean, I don't live there in that neighborhood. I can't speak for them, but I did try to find out every possible reason. I know there's wildlife. The wildlife is going to stay there because for travel patterns, they're going to utilize the creek. And the extra, what is it, 30 or 50-foot buffer is usually required?
50 foot on the creek.
So we're 35 feet over that. So we're 25 feet higher below the trees. There won't be any visibility. And then we've added like another 30 feet on the buffer from the homes. And I would hope that
Buffers to the building, right, not to the parking lot?
To the building, exactly right, yeah. I'm not exactly sure, Mr. Patel may know. He's got all the details. And if you've seen the colors that they went with, they're trying to use nature-rich colors, the brick, everything like that. And they're going to work the planning with Mr. Cardosi on that at a later date. So it's actually going to be really beautiful. Is there anything else anybody can think of? Any questions? Cool.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in support or against this item, please come forward and state your name.
My name is Mark Beckworth. I live at 2379 Hamilton Cove in Creekside subdivision. My wife and I have lived there for about 21 years now. And I got a couple of questions and concerns. The one thing is traffic. You're asked to approve a hotel that's about 150 yards from a hotel site that's been dormant for 2 years. And when both of these hotels get built, the cut-through, because we have to take a cut-through due to traffic on McIngvale that goes between Guarantee Bank, Arby's, AT&T, no one takes care of that. City says it's not their responsibility. But I don't understand the need for another hotel when one has been approved that has just not been anything happened for over 2 years, plus the traffic, and it's going to displace a green space. I won't get to see my deer every morning when I go, and it's going to eliminate a ball field. So we are concerned about this development because when both hotels get open, it's a 2-lane road coming in to Creekside subdivision, Creekside Boulevard. So we're just concerned about overdevelopment in a very short space. So, thank you.
Anyone else in support or against this item?
My name is Buffy Polinsky. I live at 2365 Mason Drive. My house backs up to the creek. And he stated, that the hotel is going to be, as tall as the trees. Well, the creek is in such bad shape, those trees are going to fall. I have been fighting with the city now, trying to get some help in my backyard because of all the erosion. I have a tree that's about to fall on my shed because of erosion. And it's just getting worse. I've had the city come out to my house. I've got the big drain pipe, excuse me, I've got the big drain pipe that goes under my fence, that goes out to the creek from the street, the big culvert thing, that's falling apart. So with 2 hotels, with the creek on either side of Creekside Street, it's going to be a huge problem. My property value is already going to go down, and I just think it's not right. And, I don't know if I've had a few calls with the mayor trying to get some help. So I've already spent $3,000 trying to fix it myself. It's not working. I mean, it's just erosion from that creek, and it's only going to get worse, especially with what's fixing to happen. Hopefully not, but, and then also, what they did over at the, by the daycare. I mean, how come that can be done, but it can't be done anywhere else to help? Because that was an erosion issue also by the daycare and by the new doctor's office over there. So, but I think the more development we have on our side, it's going to cause more problems. So I don't think it's necessary to have a development go on until the the water damage and everything, and the water erosion and everything is fixed. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support or against this item? Other questions from the commissioners?
I got a question for Austin, or some of the commissioners. I wasn't here 2 years ago when the other one was approved. What was the height in the stories?
Home 2 Suites, I believe, was 57. And the Holiday Inn was something similar, 52.
I think it was 52 or something, yeah. My biggest concern is the height. I mean, it's a 5-story mega hotel backing right up to a subdivision. I know the 4-story to the west of the property was approved back in September, but that's 15, roughly 15 feet difference. And actually, looking at the drawing today, I seen coming on my way home from work, this, same hotel. It's a nice, very nice hotel, which I agree, Hernando needs a nice hotel. It's taller than the one in South Haven. The one in South Haven, I'm not sure if you're related to do with that one or not, it is 4 stories. That sits right on Interstate 55. Huge building, and the lady is right, the drainage, that creek does have a lot of drainage issue, erosion already.
Have another question?
Is there anything to, Austin, is there anything, I know that there are different areas that have drainage issues like that. Is there anything to address that, or how would that be addressed if it becomes a bigger problem?
There are NRCS projects and funds available to address exactly what you're talking about, the rock project. And I know there's a project in design soon to happen on that side of McIngvale. I just don't know the scope of which. But talking with the mayor is the best point of contact. He's way more familiar with that than I am.
I don't think we can approach that creek at all from a development standpoint.
It's a non-disturb buffer, and it's built to protect the residential versus the commercial, but the NRCS project, what it does is stabilize the bank and preserve the trees to keep the buffer from eroding.
I've seen it in other places, and it works well.
But the water's going to end up in the creek. I mean, that's from that.
It's got to discharge somewhere.
It's got to discharge somewhere.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve and now table this item?
Make a motion to deny the zoning height variance requested by Mr. Sampatel, representing the owner of the property, to allow construction of a 5-story hotel building with a maximum height of 65 feet, 30 feet taller than the maximum 35-foot height allowable by ordinance in the C2 Highway Commercial District based upon the findings A, B, C, and D.
A second?
Was there a motion to deny?
It was.
I'll second.
Commissioner Clark?
Nay.
Commissioner Safley?
Nay.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to deny this item passed. And then the 10-day deal.
Oh, yes, sir. Any appeal, as long as it's turned into our office in 10 days, can go in front of the Board of Aldermen for an opinion. And so there is an available option for an appeal. And if that happens, we do send out notifications to everybody. So you'll get another letter in the mail.
The next item is PL 1703, ice plant variance. Request for a variance to the required setback. The subject property is located on the south side of East Commerce Street, west side of Ice Plant Lane, and north side of East Center Street in Section 18, Township 3, Range 7. Joey Moore, JM Engineering and Development, LLC, representing the owner. Mr. Cardozo, would you give us the staff planning comments and remarks?
Yes, sir. This is PL 1703, and the request is for a variance to the required front yard setbacks on Ice Plant, Center, and Commerce Street. It is a triple frontage lot. Mr. Joey Moore is representing the owner of the property. A proposed Dunkin' Donuts is the current development plan, and the requested front yard setback of 50 feet And the triple frontage situation does not allow him to situate the building in any way other than request a variance. A detailed staff report is attached to this application, and as you can see, the front yard setbacks of 44, 19, and 26 from the frontages are what he's requesting, so it'd be a variance on all three frontages. The site map where it shows 3 different parcels has been corrected, it's just not reflected in the current tax roll. So this is one piece of property rather than the 3, and most of the commissioners may remember that from last year. We fixed that. Property zone C2 commercial, so the use is allowable that's proposed on the site, but the front yard setback is the issue, and the triple frontage is what has created that issue. The applicant did provide responses to the 4 criteria for variance approval, and there's attached exhibits of a site plan, zoning, and location and site map in your staff report. The applicant is available here, and I'm available if you have any questions as well.
Questions from Mr. Cordoz? Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety?
Good evening. Joey Moore, JM Engineering and Design, 286 County Road 103, Oxford, Mississippi. As Austin stated, it's kind of a unique lot. It's only 0.36 acres. It's tough to get anything in there with this 50-foot setback. So our basic approach was kind of look at the buildings east and west of here, how far they are off the street, and kind of find that in between while we still make the site functional for emergency access, drive-through traffic, stacking, all that. So if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions for the applicant? Anyone in support or against this item, please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety.
George Reedy, 175 East Commerce, right next door. I guess this is a little bit strange because this is personal. That's my office next door, as everybody knows. Even though I do all this kind of practice, I think this is the first time I've represented myself. But I don't have any real objection to the Dunkin' Donuts. In fact, even though he's making me sleep on the couch tonight because he had this on Valentine's night on the agenda and I couldn't take my wife to dinner, they probably also, the secretaries in my office would all probably quit and all that if I said, well, I stopped at Dunkin' Donuts. I actually think it's a good use for the project, but my concern is, honestly, and y'all know that I'm overly straightforward, right? When the Wilsons bought this property, I was ecstatic because I knew it would be a first class whatever happened over there. I knew it was going to have to be setbacks, and it even talked to Austin and then our previous planner about this, that there would have to be setbacks allowed. And I don't have any problem with that. I don't have a problem with the footprint, but since we don't get notices on actual design review, I started asking questions about what they were going to do because it is next door to me, and it is in the historical district. Right, and that's very important to me, more so than even being next to me, that we're in the historical district. And I asked, was there elevations or in the suggestions what it was going to be, just other than a Dunkin' Donuts? And the answer was no. They wouldn't provide anything. So I'm concerned about what it's going to look like. And again, this is the opportunity to publicly express that because the public doesn't get to have any input about the site plan itself and the buildings and the design review. I mean, certainly I can talk to Austin about it and somebody could tell me, but I mean, I have no idea, so I don't know whether to object or not object. There will be necessary to have some setbacks, whatever goes in there. I think it's a good thing for the community, but I sure would like to know what they're going to do and what the building's going to look like and exactly where everything's going to sit and what's it's going to be before agreeing to any particular setback. I do want to say another couple of things, though, because there's already parking issue there. So just so he'll know while he's sitting here, because eventually he'll get approved, at some point, right? So I want him to know that we already have parking issues there because those are all private properties and the parking spaces right across the street are mine, right? And you've already got the fancy tea thing there, right? So there's going to have to be some kind of way to control that parking, like some commitment from Dunkin' Donuts that they will refuse to serve people walking up to the drive-through window, because the best I can tell from the plat there, the drive-through is going to be on our side of the building, and he's going to have whatever is designated parking on the west of the building. So the drive-through is going to be, but I can see people parking all over me in my law office parking lot, parking there, walking over to the drive-through window to order get their donuts. So there would have to be some kind of restrictions on that. There would have to be some kind of traffic control devices on that street, because even though the city has posted a no truck sign on it and also has posted one-way signs at Commerce Street, at Center Street, and then also at, what's that, Riley back there, Commissioner Hawkins? South Street in front of the school, people still, it's constant. There's more traffic going the wrong way on the one-way street than there is on others. So there's going to have to be, especially because of this design, there's going to have to be something done to traffic control in there, because they're going to have to go out on Ice Plant or on Center Street, but they can't come back through because then they'll be turning. So anyway, it's just an impossible traffic situation there. That can all be addressed, but those are things that'll have to be done. And I guess we're going to do got another variance on the, okay, all right. So I realize there's got to be a variance to the setbacks, but I'm very concerned without seeing designs or see what the building looks like before we all pass on it, because this will be only shot again.
Can I respond to that about the building? Sure. Just to let you guys know, we were wanting the building elevations just like everyone else is, but they didn't want to move forward with any building design until they knew what size building they could design to. And Austin did make a good point about, I thought it was neighboring the historic district, but if it's in there, it's fine, that we would make those considerations and go through that process with him. But they didn't want to turn the architects loose on this size building until we had the setbacks approved. That's why we haven't turned anything in.
Anyone else in support or against this item?
Austin Wilson, 2380 Alce Valley Lane, Hernando. I'm an agent involved and landowner in partnership with my granddad, Dale Wilson, too. So we've been working with the user just to kind of go over Mr. Reedy's concerns. Dale and I, share the same concerns. We want it to look great, too. We know that it will. We're going to rely on our great new city planner, Mr. Cardosi, to handle all the design review process. But just to keep this deal moving forward, we ask for the variances to be approved tonight so we can keep moving forward and get to that stage. So we're excited about this user. We think it's a great use for the community on a lot that's really tough, really small. We've got a great site plan, we feel like. So once we can, get these variances in place, we can move forward with the design review process. So that's our request tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else in support or against this item? Questions from the commissioners?
Austin, the property is in the host.
I think it's neighboring. It's not in, but it's very close to. And I know my idea of downtown, like everyone else's, is you come across the railroad tracks, everything narrows, and it does become if it's not technically in, somewhat close to the historic district. So I've told almost everyone in the room I'm going to hold this one really tight on design regs.
As far as the setback and everything, it's not going to look out of place with what's hard to tell on here, but it's.
And I, full disclosure, in the meetings, I actually recommended them to, even if they didn't need it, to pursue a variance request to get it closer to Commerce to match the existing buildings, because almost everything up and down Commerce is a non-conforming, and I think in order to protect that streetscape, you're gonna have to move the building up, so.
Okay.
I think it's important.
Okay.
Any other questions? There a motion to approve, deny, table, decide.
Make a motion to approve the request by Mr. Joey Moore, representing the owner of the property, of variance of required front yard setbacks. The subject property is located at the south side of East Commerce Street, west side, north side of East Center Street, in Section 18, Township 3, Range 7, based upon the following A, B, C, and D. And I do have faith in Mr. Cardozi for this.
There a second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye.
Motion to approve this item passes. The final item is PL 1704, ice plant variance, request for a variance to the required impervious surface. The subject property is located on the south side of East Commerce Street, west side of Ice Plant Lane, and north side of East Center Street in Section 18, Township 3, Range 7. Joey Moore, JM Engineering and Development, LLC, representing on. Mr. Cardozo, give us the staff plan and comments.
Yes, sir. This is PL 1704, and the request is to waive the maximum allowed impervious surface from the required 75%, and the applicant's requesting 86%. So generally speaking, the maximum allowed pavement on a site is 75% of impervious roof and pavement, anything that doesn't absorb water. And the nature of the site, as we previously mentioned in the last application, is it is very small and has 3 frontages. And so those 3 frontages have required 3 streetscapes. And so that's the area between the parking lot and sidewalk and curb on all 3 frontages. And anything in the right-of-way couldn't technically be counted, even if it's going to be green space planted. So as you can see on the 3rd page of your staff report, the area in green is where he's proposing green space, and the landscape island is required to break up the 100 feet or 10 spaces between uninterrupted parking, and then the green around the perimeter would be that streetscape along where the sidewalk's going to be. So in order to make that work, and the building area and required parking, as Mr. Reedy said in the last one, was the best they could do was 86% impervious surface, or pervious, 86% impervious surface. So it's more pavement than is allowed. And so his request would be a waiver of that 75% for his site plan. Once this goes into formal review with design review, that's when we'll get our formal landscape plan with plantings. But right now, they just identified the green space of what they could get as pervious surface. Just as the last application, I've included proposed motions to approve and deny and table. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Questions for Mr. Cardozo?
I've got a question. Do you, is there any type of flooding problems in that area in a heavy rain?
Not that I know of. I know there's an underground drainage structure in the middle of the site that was a design barrier, and I think it's going to have to be improved with the construction of the site.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Reedy probably can talk to it a whole lot better than I can about flooding, but
I'll be glad to answer it. Yeah, I don't think there's any standing water. Of course, everybody knew that the Douglas's operation was over there for years. I don't think there's any problem. I will tell you that because of the way the bank across the street was allowed to be up high like that, all that comes rushing down. On a heavy rain, you get a 2 or 3 inch rain. It doesn't come in my parking lot. I've never noticed it on them, but it does rush down an ice plant. It comes around that corner. And I've seen just, 2 inches of water on an ice plant.
Yeah, so temporarily, it wouldn't, it might present.
Only in
a
real
problem.
heavy rains.
Yeah. Other than that, it shouldn't present a problem.
No, sir. And, honestly, when the Douglas's structures were over there, the whole place was maybe 3% of it wasn't covered by rooftop or asphalt.
Just a note on that, we will be putting in detention as well to account for, the impervious area that we're putting in. I don't know if there's any detention on this site now, but I don't think there is. We found some pipes underneath there, so I think we'll be drastically improving the runoff that's coming from this site from the current conditions.
Any other questions?
I just have one. I'm actually in favor of this, absolutely, even if you wanted to do less. I just would ask Austin, since our buildings across the street from the wind comes from the west to the east in the wintertime, we catch all the tree leaves, so y'all waive the tree requirements. I can't do that. We don't want him to have to plant any trees. Flowers and the little old bushes, maybe. Nothing evergreens, nothing that sheds leaves, please.
I'll bring it back for variance.
I think there's a large tree on that property, so it's probably gonna be going away.
It's gone. Praise the Lord, the Wilsons took it down. Another great thing they did for the community.
Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
Make a motion to approve the request by Joey Moore, representing the owner of the property, for a waiver to the maximum allowed impervious surface. Subject property is located on the south side of East Commerce Street, west side of Ice Plant Lane, and north side of East Center Street in sections 18, Township 3, Range 7, based upon the following findings in A, B, C, and D.
A second?
Second.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Skeen?
Aye. The motion to approve this item passes. Anything you want to?
Just a reminder, this Thursday at 6 p.m. is our comprehensive plan update. Our consultant's coming in from Nashville to give his draft proposal. So 6 p.m. in this room, we'll have him here.
6 p.m. this
Yep.
room.
Yes, sir.
Okay, a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second?
It's my favorite one.
All right. Yeah,
Seems
right.
like somebody better figure
Second.
it out,
All right, motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
Sure.
Let's go home.